people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, October 26, 2022. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, writer Jacob Silverman, author of the recent piece in the New Republic, The Quiet Political Rise of David Sacks, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom. Basically, the latest Peter Thiel bro. Then, Lauren Ornelas, founder and president of the Food Empowerment Project, on Amy's Kitchen, attempting to sabotage any attempts to unionize their workers. Also on the program today, Fetterman-Oz debate features Fetterman's stroke recovery and Oz's draconian abortions stance. Republicans, unfortunately, now contesting House seats in blue states. Meanwhile, the National Republican Party jumps back into the New Hampshire Senate race. New poll shows Democrats must focus on the cost of living in the run-up to the midterms. Now just 15 days away. Less than 2 weeks. 13 days. Sam Alito at the Heritage Foundation addresses the Supreme Court leak. Bernie Sanders disagrees with the House CPC letter on Ukraine. A Russian court upholds Brittany Griner's sentence. The Biden administration hints at a future prisoner exchange. And lastly, rest in peace, Mike Davis, author, City of Courts, among a lot of other great books. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is, as my co-host, Emma Vigeland says, it is
Hump Day.
There you go.
There we are.
I am bound by trademark to let her say her
We recently
coined phrase.
Yeah, we renegotiated my contract so that
It's also just a law that exists outside of anything that happens in this office.
Well, here we are libertarians and we privilege contracts between two individuals overall. So
we'll discuss that actually with Jacob Silverman, who wrote this piece about this guy David Sacks, who you should know about, and it not only important, relevant to sort of like direct contributions to candidates, but in many respects, creating the ecosystems and the ecosystems, if you will, of sort of libertarian, so-called populist thought, I guess, is we will talk to Silverman about that. And then also, when we speak to Lauren Ornelas, it is a follow-up on an interview we did in May with a representative of the Teamsters who was helping to organize an Amy's Kitchen factory out in, was it San Jose?
Santa Rosa, kind of.
Santa Rosa. And no, it was San Jose, I think, is where they were doing it. And they've since closed that factory as a way of avoiding the unionization. So we're going to get caught up on what's going on with that. Let's get right into it with the debate last night. Fetterman and Oz. Fetterman, not a particularly great debater regardless, but certainly, I think, debates are about performance in many respects. If they were just about substance, we wouldn't really need debates. We could just have policy papers be read off at a on stage. That said, Oz told a lot of lies, and really, one of the things that's really important about this, and it is part of the reason why I was, disappointed on some level in Warnock's tact when he debated Walker, was so much of this is about the spin after the fact, because few people watch these debates, and your low information voter, right, who is the one that you're really concerned about for the most part, comes out of these debates and really gets their information from the retelling of the debate. And I think longtime listeners of this program know that I have a habit of listening to the radio in the morning, largely to hear how the AP reports on some of this stuff. I want to know how most people get their news in the morning, which is like 1 minute at the top of the hour and the bottom of the hour from the AP. And the AP basically played the two clips, or highlighted the two things that we're about to highlight. One is the opening statement by Fetterman, which in some respects sounds better than it looks. But he was smart, at least, in addressing the fact that the guy's had a stroke. Now, remember, there are two people in the Senate as we speak who had strokes and are still in the Senate, and you don't even know who they are.
And Fetterman is in the middle of a recovery process here, and he's using transcription software because he doesn't have the auditory processing that he had before the stroke, but he's working his way back to that point.
Yeah, it's a speech pathology.
Right.
And part of this, too, I feel like is some of the reaction is Fetterman's out of his, as you say, not a great debater. Part of it is because, like, look at him in the suit, right? He does not look like this. He feels comfortable in this setting. He wants to be out there and like talking to people and in shorts and the sweatshirt and stuff. That's part of his appeal. So the format was stacked against him in a variety of different ways.
But here is his opening statement.
Mayor of Braddock, a small borough near Pittsburgh, and 1 term as lieutenant governor. You're running for a seat that could decide the balance of power in Washington. What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody. I'm running to serve Pennsylvania. He's running to use Pennsylvania. Here's a man that spent more than $20 million of his own money to try to buy that seat. I'm also having to talk about something called the Oz rule, that if he's on TV, he's lying. He did that during his career on his TV show. He's done that during his campaign about lying about our record here. And he's also lying probably during this debate. And let's also talk about the elephant in the room. I had a stroke. He's never let me forget that. And I might miss some words during this debate, mush 2 words together, but it knocked me down, but I'm going to keep coming back up. And this campaign is all about, to me, is about fighting for everyone in Pennsylvania that ever got knocked down, that needs to get back up, and fighting for all forgotten communities all across Pennsylvania that also got knocked down, that needs to get back up.
Thank you very much.
All right. I mean, so he basically, his performance is like Herschel Walker level there in terms of, articulation and smoothness.
I've heard Sarah Palin do worse.
And that's true. But like I say, what's important that comes out of these debates is how it is, what the news media decides to highlight. Certainly, at least in the print media, a lot of it is about how Fetterman's performance was. But what I heard on the AP news today was that clip, or at least a smaller portion of that clip, and then this clip.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Another big issue for voters is abortion. Mr. Oz, we will begin with you. You say that you're pro-life, but you do support abortion exceptions in the cases of rape, incest, and to protect the life of the mother. Aside from those three exceptions, should abortion be banned in America? 60 seconds.
There should not be involvement from the federal government in how states decide their abortion decisions. As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the federal government.
Pause it for 1
involved with
second.
that.
I can't help but think that some of the difficult conversations are like, hey, you told us to take this supplement, that it was going to radically change our lives. And that turned out to be absolutely false.
Turning blue from this colloidal silver.
For some, this is a difficult conversation.
I like the idea that, well, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Government and how states decide their abortion decisions. As a physician, I've been in the room when there's some difficult conversations happening. I don't want the federal government involved with that at all. I want women, doctors, local political leaders, letting the democracy that's always allowed our nation to thrive, to put the best ideas forward so states can decide for themselves. Contrast that with my opponent.
All right, we don't. I mean, that's the basic thing there. Somehow, a federal government that says you have a right to an abortion and this is something for you to have a right to talk about your doctor is problematic. But having you and your doctor, and of course the local officials there, to decide whether you are forced to carry a pregnancy to term, he's got no problem with it.
That it makes no sense. And I think at certain points in the debate, he was asked directly about the Lindsey Graham bill, and he kind of skirted around it, even though here he's more saying no federal government involvement, which I feel like people have an understanding that is code for, okay, you're not going to be able to get an abortion if I have my way. Because Republicans have lied about this for years at this point. They lied when Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, whatever, lied when they said Roe was settled law, and then they overturned it. And now they're lying a second time that they don't want the federal government involved. So even with that, though, the idea that it should not be between a doctor like me and a patient, that there should be, Representative Johnson coming in to let you know from your state house is comical.
I will examine you, and then the county comptroller will also come in and examine you, and then we'll decide, the three of us.
It is like a comedy sketch. I'm pretty sure Amy Schumer did a sketch like this where it was a doctor and a woman talking about her abortion, and then all these old white men come in and tell her what to do. That's basically what he's advocating.
Can we just say, bring the local politicians, bring the best ideas forward? Is that what happened to that lawmaker, or in that case, that Republican lawmaker said, oh yeah, she came and she was having a miscarriage, but we sent her home because there was still a heartbeat? That's the best idea that's being brought forward. It's killing people.
The best ideas win. I mean, that's how the free market works, baby.
And which lawmakers? The mayor, the state assembly people, or state senators? Who's in the room there?
As a doctor, it's only a problem when the feds get involved. When some idiot that got his job because of local real estate, that's welcome.
I would have liked to seen him have to answer the question a little more directly about if there is a bill, will you vote for it? Like I say,
right.
The point you made, he's not going to answer that question directly, and that's really at the end of the day that matters. Even when they ask Fetterman what his qualifications at this point are, just I'm not going to vote for Mitch McConnell to be leader. And end of story. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Jacob Silverman, author of the piece in the New Republic, The Quiet Political Rise of David Sacks, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom. First, a message from our sponsor today. IAC Laser Engraving is a leftist-owned worker collective started by a longtime listener of this program, Ryan Lubin, back in September of 2021. The company is democratically structured to ensure any hierarchies are justified and efficient. They use sustainably sourced materials. They couple this with really energy-efficient laser technology to bring you some really unique gifts and products you're not going to find anywhere else. Your purchase of any of their items not only gets you a one-of-a-kind product, it also goes directly to supporting a business model that is structured around compassionate and worker-centered care as opposed to the more traditional and predatory authoritarian ones found throughout capitalism. And you got to check out some of these products. This is my sort of my favorite one.
It catches my eye every time in the office.
And this one is going to end up on Saul's wall, and he has already now on a consistent basis bugging me, and I'm like, dude, I got to keep it in the office. We're going to show people first. But this is it's an astronaut. It is made with 8 layers of hand-painted, hand-glued basswood and eucalyptus. Comes with a stand for support, or it can be obviously easily mounted on the wall. And this astronaut goes for $75. You can check it out at aiclasers.com. And they have like 60 other pieces that are like this. They're 3D layered. I think this is coming across here. It has, I don't really know how to express this. There's you can see there's 8 different layers, and each layer is just slightly smaller than the other with a different color in there. It's really super cool. I mean, I'm a bit of a woodworker myself. I can't do anything this intricate, but it really is beautiful. And they have all sorts of, like I say, like 60 different 3D layer things like mandalas and animals and mythical creatures. And there's also custom options that are available. And speaking of custom, they have these wooden puzzles that come in their own box here. Let's do this. And all sorts of pictures. You can get different. This one, the picture looks like this, and you put the pieces together. I mean, I think people know how a puzzle works, but each puzzle is made with sustainably sourced eucalyptus. They use a high definition UV printer to render each image onto the wood, where it's then cut into whatever desired amount of pieces. You can do 99 to 500 plus, essentially. There are 30 different puzzle images that they have you can choose from. But the best part, and the thing that I think makes for an amazing gift, is that you can use custom pictures. And all the puzzles come in their own felt-lined box there. And you can do like custom family or personal photos. Can be made into wooden puzzles for an additional fee. They also have like a photo frame that was shown in the past. Beautiful design, obviously on a stand with acrylic glass in the front to protect your pictures, like 10 times stronger than regular glass. And that's available for $85 at iaclasers.com. All these make for great gifts and also nice little, what do you call it? Accessories around the house? What do you call that? Accents?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Decorations.
Decorations. They're beautiful. Go to iaclasers.com to order yours today. Enter the coupon code MAJORITY10, all one word, at the purchase, and you get 10% off on their amazing products. Check it out. We have a link in the YouTube and podcast description, iaclasers.com. Use the coupon code MAJORITY10. Pick yourself up a beautiful gift. And we're getting to that season. Hanukkah, Christmas coming up.
I think I am going to get something I mean, honestly, just looking at that, I'm not even joking. It's beautiful, and it's hard to show on camera.
Kowalski already sending us gifts. So it's already that time of season.
I know.
Everybody opened them a little bit early.
I'm getting now. Well, I mean.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Jacob Silverman was written a piece in the New Republic, The Quiet Political Rise of David Sacks, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Sorry, we had a little bit of a technical complication. Appreciate people's patience. Joining us, want to welcome back to the program, Jacob Silverman. He's recently written a new piece in the New Republic, "The Quiet Political Rise of David Sacks, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom." Welcome back to the program, Jacob.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's. Where does the Prophet of Urban Doom? Well, just tell. I guess let's just start with this. Who is David Sacks?
Sure. David Sacks is a venture capitalist. He's the founder of a website called Callin, which is a podcasting website that is sort of growing in prominence. But really, he's got his start at Stanford, where he was buddies with Peter Thiel and classmates with him. He was his co-writer on the book The Diversity Myth, and a bunch of op-eds throughout the 90s and other writing that helped kind of cement Thiel's reputation. And then he followed Thiel into tech. He was the COO of PayPal early in that company's life. And he's basically a original member of the PayPal mafia. And this article is partly about trying to draw out what are the politics, at least, of some of these members of the PayPal mafia. And I think Sacks is sort of the one who's coming along later after, say, Thiel and Musk as big political influences.
Yeah, and I want to get into those politics, but let's get a little bit more sense of like this world, because in some ways, 15 years ago, we would talk about the Carnegies and the Mellons, and we would talk about the Koch brothers, and these guys seem to be sort of like the next generation in iteration of these right-wing libertarian, although they are now trying to mutate and sort of, I think, obscure this a little bit. But let's talk about a little bit about that book, Diversity Myth, because it really is fascinating. I think you characterize it as being a little homophobic, and of course, this was written before Peter Thiel was outed. I think it was by Gawker, whom he ultimately then destroyed via the funding of a lawsuit, which was just impossible for Gawker to mount a defense against at that point. But give us a sense of just like of that book and of this sort of milieu, I guess.
Sure. I mean, I do find it a little homophobic in parts. It certainly engages in a lot of casual bigotry towards people of color, towards women. There's even a Nobel Prize-winning activist from Guatemala who's dismissed as a Marxist revolutionary. But, it's really a book about the early to mid-'90s culture wars, starting on the Stanford campus, where there was kind of a conservative counter-revolution almost, or counter-reaction to the 60s and to a lot of their professors who came out of the 60s. And its big bogeyman was multiculturalism. That's what they saw as the thing infecting the culture, infecting campus culture and society, threatening speech, upending tradition. There's a lot of defense of Western civilization in their writing. So really, one thing I discovered reading this book is if you sub out some of the proper nouns or just replace multiculturalism with woke or sort of wokeism, you get a lot of the same arguments that are happening today. So I think it's one thing to say, hey, these guys probably haven't changed. I think that's one thing worth paying attention to. But also, the kind of culture warring we're seeing, it's playing out a little differently perhaps, or it's inflected by social media, shaped by social media. But you go back to the early to mid-'90s, and people like Peter Thiel and David Sacks were fighting a lot of these same battles, writing against affirmative action or perceived sort of sexual mores they didn't agree with, things like that, or simply heckling gay people as some of their friends did.
And I should add, and I think this is important too, because Sacks now, you say, is identifying himself. I've moved from libertarian to populist. I should add that at that time, in the early 90s, Pat Buchanan was on the scene, running against George Herbert Walker Bush, referred to himself as or maybe after that as a paleocon. And maybe it was 5 or 10 years later they started to use that term paleocon, but it's really John Bircher stuff, and but also in the guise of some type of populism, we should say. And so, and I would also say that if you look at Tucker Carlson's trajectory, exactly the same thing. identified as sort of a libertarian leaning in the late 90s. I mean, this is the same trajectory, but all they have done is basically come back to where Pat Buchanan was. I mean, almost identical policy prescriptions. And this is the guy who announced we're in a culture war in 1992 at the Republican National Convention. So this stuff is all like as much. It is the classic reactionary stuff, right? Like where I'm maintaining the exact hierarchies that have existed in this country since inception, but I'm dressing them up in the context of something new and rebellious. So track for us what he's been doing. Like he got his money from PayPal. I mean, where did the money come from, and where is it flowing to at this point?
Sure. So he PayPal was his first big job. I mean, he's done a solid tour of the tech industry and has good credentials as an executive. He was CEO of a company called Yammer, which is a social media company for business. He's credited with help turn, and that was sold to Microsoft, I believe. So he probably got a good payout there. His exact wealth isn't known, but I would say easily in the hundreds of billions. I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he then also is credited with helping turn around a company called Zenefits, which is sort of, I believe, an HR company of sorts. And then he struck out mostly on his own, I believe, with Craft Ventures, which is his VC firm. He's done some other things. I mean, I think there are some interesting things about him. He produced the movie. This didn't make it into my article, but he was one of the executive producers, I believe, on Thank You for Smoking. He just helped produce a movie about, I think it was about Salvador Dali with Ben Kingsley. So you know, he's a guy interested in politics and culture, and who's steadily ascended the tech ladder while maintaining these early PayPal connections that have really helped define, I think, this reactionary tech sphere.
What is it about PayPal, right? Because we know Peter Thiel's the godfather, really, of this kind of new branch of conservative funder that, as Sam says, right, the branding is as something new and rebellious, but in a sense, they're still, like, they might be isolationist a bit with foreign policy, but when it comes to domestic policy, it's all about, like, free market libertarian ideology, which is indistinguishable from what, say, you know, the Kochs wanted, but they're more corporate suits as opposed to Silicon Valley kind of rebels, is how they're trying to brand themselves. But what is it about PayPal? Is it really just like Peter Thiel's influence that kind of birthed these people, or I mean, because it does extend beyond. I think this kind of like funder is not confined to PayPal, but a lot of it comes back to this.
Yeah, it is startling sort of how many major companies kind of owe their influence to PayPal or were founded by someone there. I mean, PayPal was almost exclusively white men. There were a couple non-white men, including the founders of YouTube. They went from PayPal to found YouTube. But, you know, supposedly there were rules even sort of unofficially early on against women and people of color. But it's known as this boys network. And, you know, it brought their dream originally actually represents something like the crypto dream today, which was sort of a borderless, stateless currency. A lot of that obviously got put by the wayside, and it became this huge monetary payments network that was very much regulated and worked within banks and the law. But it was such a phenomenal success, and they've made some astute judgments since then in some of their investments. I mean, certainly they've had some failures, but it's just really been this spawning ground for a lot of the big companies in tech, but also a lot of the kind of conservative political activism. I mean, I think you'll find people on the left and, well, left sort of generally, but on the right in tech who are donating money. But Peter Thiel and sort of his like-minded network give off an impression of being more organized, more committed, more ideological. And I'm not saying that Sachs is exactly like Thiel, but he's his former co-writer, they're friends. They do share a lot of ideas. And he donates to Thiel's guys, to Blake Masters and J.D. Vance. He holds these fundraisers, including with Keith Rabois, I believe is his name, who's in my article, who's another PayPal Mafia guy. So this network has managed to kind of hold itself together while its members go and become phenomenally successful elsewhere.
He also was a huge funder of the Chesa Boudin recall.
Right.
I mean,
right.
huge.
So I think Yeah, and I think this is what's really important to realize that, I'm trying to be descriptive here. What are these guys actually doing? Where's the money going, as you asked earlier in this segment? And so the money is going to things like all these recall elections against progressive DAs, against Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, which also failed. So that's the idea, I think, more broadly. Sachs has talked about replicating this model across the country where they were actually successful in recalling Chesa Boudin. It was essentially this union of big developers and reactionary big tech. And David Sachs was certainly one of the most valuable people behind that, and he was one of the biggest fundraisers. So
1/3 you wrote. That's nuts. I mean, the idea that 1/3 of all that money, I mean, obviously it's politically aligned, but the idea that 1/3 of that money comes from essentially one source is just nuts to me.
Yeah, and there's a difficulty in finding out also where some of the money is going or coming from. The woman who was appointed Boudin's replacement, she had worked for Boudin, then quit, become an unofficial spokesperson of the opposition campaign. After she got appointed as his replacement, she revealed, actually, this other opposition group or recall group paid me $150,000, which was, of course, sponsored by a billionaire developer. So you start digging into this stuff and you realize there's a lot of money out there. I mean, even there's a woman named Michelle Tandler who's sort of become notorious as an anti-San Francisco influencer. She's someone who says that there's meth and dog poop and, and disease everywhere and things like that. She no longer lives in San Francisco. But her small startup is funded by David Sachs. So I think you see that this wasn't in my article, but there's a VC who's a friend of Sachs. He's on his podcast named Jason Calacanis. Calacanis doesn't live in San Francisco, but he funded a journalist to start a Substack about crime in San Francisco. It was above board. We knew what was happening, but I think that's how you're seeing money flowing in different ways through sort of covert, supposedly grassroots recall campaigns, but also through new types of media, podcasting, hiring people to be reporters and dig up dirt. And one last thing I'll say is, since my article came out, I've heard from a number of people who work generally in city politics or education in in San Francisco. And what a lot of them feel like, I think, is that, yeah, they have problems in policing and education, these other city systems, but they're losing control because there's all this outside money flooding in, and they don't always know from where or to what end. And there's a sense that kind of governance is being undermined by all this money.
Let's talk about Colin. He's put $12 million into it. I mean, I guess if you've got his kind of money, that's not necessarily a lot. But is there a sense that he anticipates making a lot of money from this? I mean, I am really skeptical, particularly at this stage in the sort of trajectory of the podcast world. Is something I watch in terms of this technology, right? Like, there was a boon like 4 or 5 years ago where money was rushing into this space because it was going to be huge, but it's not clear to me that the money's going to be anywhere other than in the advertising, like in the technology to deliver this. I think there's value there, obviously, but I don't know if there's like the billionaire, I want 100x return on my money, which these guys tend to look for in the VC tech world. Let's talk about the other reasons why he thinks it's valuable to put $12 million in there.
Sure. I think that's exactly right. That we don't know if there's going to be a Facebook of Colin or before it became Meta and started collapsing, but some huge billion user type podcast platform.
I think like we know there's not going to be, right? I mean, because like, where's the money coming from here? It's not. It could be, like you've got. I mean, like if you think about the sort of the technologies, this is not Zoom. It's a technology. I think if you got a small company, you can make some money, but you're not going to get 10x return on this company because you need more people who want to do a live call-in show for it to have its value. And you're not going to charge listeners. And it's even if it starts to skim money off of like a Patreon, they have trouble making money on that. Like he must be smarter than that in terms of.
Yeah. I think so, and I think Sachs has been involved in the media since he was in college, writing articles for the Wall Street Journal and National Review, and the book, The Diversity Myth, was a very much political book. Dan Quayle's chief of staff helped advise them, and this libertarian think tank also helped them and sponsored it. So I think he's always had kind of one mind towards a political play, and I think that's what Colin kind of represents. It's almost like a rich guy buying a money-losing magazine, but knowing that it's a vehicle for potential influence. He might make money later because he's an early investor, and there were a couple other outside investors, by selling it, I think, to Rumble or the next sort of right-wing conglomerate. But really, I think right now it's a place to kind of establish himself as more of a writer and podcaster, which he's doing, and also to gather people he's interested in who he wants to put under sort of his brand or his umbrella. For example, the most retweeted account by Sachs is Glenn Greenwald, who's also on Colin.
Now, Glenn's not just on Colin, right? I mean, there are people who are getting paid to be on Colin. Like, I mean, I make money off of advertising on YouTube. I make some subscription money off of Twitch. Maybe we get a little bit on Facebook. But no, I'm not getting paid a guaranteed fee. It really is all just based upon who's listening and what the advertising revenues are, and I get a share of that from Alphabet or from Meta or all these or Twitch. But they've gone out and paid people to be on the platform. Yes.
That's right. A couple of people were willing to talk a bit about that on background. Someone reached out to them. It sort of depends. I mean, you can go and set up a show on there and potentially make some money, but I think it's sort of similar to the Substack model in that they did reach out to sort of internet famous journalists or people, especially people who are seen as kind of contrarian or iconoclast or really plugged in, people with popular podcasts. I was accused a little bit after the article came out of lumping everyone in the same bucket, but you do see some things, what they're going for, especially people who might be just called very online. And I'm not sure exactly how much people are making, but I do think it is sort of similar to Substack, where you might get some money up front to float you for the first year, and then after that, they might reconsider either a different kind of contract, or you might be more on your own with a higher degree of profit sharing. But this is sort of the model now, I think, with a lot of these new online media companies is there is a certain degree of curation. As much as they like to talk about being an open platform, whether it's Substack, Colin, Rumble, of course, they are paying some people and cultivating some people to be the representative voices of this platform.
And this isn't transparent enough for us to really get an exact sense of what message Sachs wants out there. But presumably, and for full disclosure, I did not get an offer to be paid on Colin. There's clearly an ideology that Sachs wants promoted, and is using his podcast platform as a mechanism to do that. What can we garner about that? You say iconoclast and contrarian, but I guess it's contrarian to whom? Right? Like
that's a good point.
I mean, there were protests in this country for police reform. We didn't get police reform. You could argue those protests were pretty contrarian to, 250 years of 300 years of history of the United States. It just doesn't get labeled contrarian because we decided not to label that contrarian.
Right.
What do we like when we say contrarian? Like, what is the ideology to the extent that we see it there?
Well, I think someone like Sachs is probably conventionally right wing in some ways, though. Of course, he calls himself a populist. Some of the people on the platform, like I said, he hasn't been reporting much lately because he has some personal things going on. But Glenn Greenwald is certainly someone Sachs likes quite a bit. And he was one of the first people, I think, brought to the platform. You have other people like Brianna Joy Gray or Aaron Mate or Michael Tracy. Not all of them are necessarily the same, but there are people who have sort of perhaps been on the left and broken with the left in some ways. Some kind of people who are kind of at war with the conventional media establishment. Jesse Single's another one of those people. And that people have strong opinions about some of these folks, and I don't claim that they're all the same, but people who are generally either traveling somewhere on the right or kind of post-left or might be described as heterodox. In terms of actual sort of issues they're concerned with right now, I think one thing you see is that, per the subtitle of my article, is sort of crime and what I call urban doomerism, this idea that liberals and Democrats have kind of failed cities and identity politics and wokeism has run amok, and we're not doing what's necessary to take care of people, which of course doesn't extend to the homeless. And then more recently,
what is it?
Yeah, more
recently, what is the affirmative policy set for a lot of these people? I'm curious about that, to the extent that you could glean any.
I think that's important too. I should note, just for your viewers, that I tried to talk to Sachs, and I talked to one of his representatives for a while. I emailed him and people around him, and he declined. He doesn't talk directly to me that much, though I guess he has appeared on Tucker Carlson and a number of podcasts.
So you were canceled by him. You were canceled by him.
Yeah, right. I was censored.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that's the question: is what are the positive commitments? Or there is a Pat Buchanan style paleocon isolationism, and certainly if you, from the perspective of, hey, we shouldn't rush into a war in Ukraine, or this proxy war is very dangerous. Like I think there's fertile room on the left to kind of to make those arguments. But this is a more instinctive isolationist nationalism. I mean, he's used the language of America first. He's used that phrase. I don't think it's really, sorry, we have a cat in the way. But I don't think it's really informed by sort of like left liberal skepticism of state power or of the legacy of the war on terror, anything like that. There's also a real desire to clean up homelessness and crime in San Francisco and other major cities, with a real lack of thought about how do you fix this stuff non-carcerally, without police, and without criminalizing homelessness. It's kind of, I call it sort of a version of call the manager politics, or Vice had an article, what it called the next door election, about the mayoral election in LA. Really people who are sort of like, I've had enough. I don't want to have to see homeless people or be afraid to see someone ODing on the street. That offends me, law-abiding citizen. Why won't the police do something? But in terms of just strict positive commitments, it's hard to tell more than that, sort of a general ideology of innovation, pro-business. But I couldn't really tell you. They like Ron DeSantis, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And his cohort.
The through line to me is just like a kind of resentment of a certain attitude of liberal politics that is more of what drives an audience where they feel alienated by, say, like what they'll call wokeism. But and some of these free-thinking influencers that seem to be in this post-left umbrella speak to like a just kind of resentment of those kinds of politics. And so nothing positive is really necessary to provide, as long as, an outlet for said resentment is the positivity for the audiences seeking them out.
Exactly. And I think it is a lot based on resentment. I sort of call it the politics of pique. I mean, just this outrage and this kind of sense that people are fed up, and that all you need to do is be anti-woke or anti the current thing, and then somehow that's enough without really substituting anything in return. So that plays very well on social media, plays well in Tucker Carlson. You don't really need to have a positive agenda or say how you're going to make people's lives better. You're just going to make homeless people disappear, basically. And I think that's what's really unsettling, is once you get past that initial outrage that they feel, or sort of the disenchantment with liberalism or with the Democratic Party, which I think a lot of people understand, but it's like, then what? And where does your empathy extend in the political realm? Do you just care about other middle class and rich people being able to live their lives out in comfort, or do you actually want to make society better in some way?
Well, Jacob, it's a fascinating piece, and I feel like this is, there's a new generation of these massive funders who are, in many ways, savvy to their native digital. And in a way that like the Koch brothers weren't. And we saw that in terms of what they invested in the sort of like a rival apparatus to the RNC. This, I feel like, is a new iteration of right-wing money that is native to digital, very savvy about it. And they're using that to spread their and to create to spread their ideology and to create media narratives that, we can just look at it in terms of like the way that people look at the Black Lives Matter protest at this point in retrospect. almost all of it we hear online now is a right-wing framing of those protests. And they have done a very successful job, I think, in demonizing those people, because in some ways, like, they stay in the game longer on these topics. They are relentless in staying in, and part of it is because they're getting paid to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Sachs has seen his profile rise enormously in recent months, especially around Ukraine. Funnily enough, I actually started this article over the summer before he was talking about Ukraine as much, and it's mostly focused on domestic politics, where he's channeling a lot of his money to DeSantis, to Blake Masters, and he gave $1 million to J.D. Vance, basically because Peter Thiel asked him to, reportedly. So they can stay in the game also because they have money, and some of them are trying to fund alternative media institutions. There is some question, I think, whether someone like Peter Thiel has the long-term patience for this. He's fought with Mitch McConnell a little bit lately. He can be kind of fickle, but I think that's also what people need to be aware of. There is a new kind of reactionary ideology forming here, or at least a new realignment that mirrors some of the stuff from the early 90s. But now it does have potentially a lot of tech money behind it, plus also this population of people who are fed up with the Democratic Party, sometimes for understandable reasons. So the question ultimately, I think, is, can it scale? For now, it's causing some trouble. It's winning an election here or there. But is this going to be something that we're really going to be reckoning with, say, in 2024?
And we should just add, you mentioned J.D. Vance. He is one of the lead funders of Rumble. So
absolutely,
they know what they're doing here, as far as I can tell. Jacob Silverman, the piece is The Quiet Political Rise of David Sachs, Silicon Valley's Prophet of Urban Doom. We'll put a link to that at majority.fm. Definitely worth the read for folks. Thanks so much for coming on and talking about it.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Lauren Ornelas, founder and president of the Food Empowerment Project, about the attempts to organize Amy's Kitchen. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Joining us now via the video camera, I guess. Never know what to call it. Lauren Ornelas. She's the founder and president of the Food Empowerment Project. Lauren, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I mentioned at the top of the show, and I just want to remind people that in May of this year, we had Tony Delorio on, I think his name was. Delorio. He was from the local Teamsters in San Jose, and he was coming on to talk about attempts to organize an Amy's Kitchen warehouse, or factory, I guess I should say. 300 employees. It had just at that point opened up maybe a year earlier, and there were a tremendous amount. And I remember him saying that it wasn't that it was unique, not necessarily unique, but a little bit different than other organizing situations he had had, because it wasn't just about pay. I mean, it was really about worker safety and the way that the workers were being treated. It was the paramount reason why they were organizing. Shortly, I think after that, Unite Here, I think it was, filed some National Labor Relations complaints about worker safety there. And then tell us what has happened since that in June.
So basically, the Teamsters have been working with Amy's production employees in Santa Rosa, California. Unite Here had been working, and still is to some degree, with workers down in San Jose, California.
Okay, sorry, I got that confused.
Yeah, no worries. And so, but you got confused because they're having the same problems in both facilities, right? And so, the workers were starting to organize with the Teamsters. Similar situation down in San Jose here with the workers at Amy's, and they had also filed complaints with the National Labor Relations Board, and they had been starting to organize, and the production facility here hadn't been around for that long. And then in May, they said that they were closing down the plant due to financial issues. This came on the heels of an incredible meeting with the workers, with Unite Here, who were ready to organize and get started. So they have all been laid off. These are some workers who were involved in the hospitality industry when it was being impacted by COVID, who moved to San Jose, which is a very expensive area, to work here to only have the plant close, I think, in definitely less than 2 years of being here.
And that was 300 people lost their job.
300 people lost their jobs. Since then, Unite Here has been doing an amazing job helping these workers get other jobs, right? I mean, we're talking about families. We're talking about, people who moved to a very expensive area for what they thought would be a good job and being treated well. They've also done a fundraiser to help a lot of these workers as well so they can survive.
Has there been any attempt to file a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board around the plant closing? Because from at least this distance, it looks like we're sending a message here. Mm-hmm. And that is, if you start to try and unionize or organize in one of our production facilities, you're going to lose your job.
Yep. I don't believe that anything has been done to file on that, because they're saying that it was because of financial losses, right? But we know that that's what other Starbucks has done. That is what other places have done. And that's their go-to. That's their way out. Instead of simply giving workers basic rights, they instead close these facilities down, which to us is fairly transparent. But it does seem to be maybe something that's working for them. And honestly, my organization, Food Empowerment Project, and others are here to say that's not going to work. We're not going away. We're still going to tell people to boycott your company because there's still workers who are being treated unfairly.
When we say workers are being treated unfairly, can you tell us a couple of the stories of what workers are being subjected to? Now, this is so the San Jose is still open. Is that right?
San Jose is closed. Santa Rosa is still open.
Santa Rosa is still open. I mean, tell us, and they're experiencing very similar treatment. Can you give us some examples?
Workers who want things like bathroom breaks, speed lines that are absolutely and utterly unreasonable for workers to endure, and for them to assume they're not going to be having any type of occupational injuries from these incredibly fast line speeds is ludicrous. There's also discrimination. The vast majority of the workers are Latinx in Santa Rosa and also in San Jose. In San Jose, there's also workers who are Vietnamese. So you had older workers being discriminated against, maybe getting some of the harder jobs. You had sexual harassment going on as well. You had, I believe, in Santa Rosa, some of the emergency exits were blocked off. So we're talking about like it running the gambit from workers who are having surgeries because of the working conditions in which they're forced to endure. And these are people who don't have the best health insurance. And the health insurance they have is actually basically there because of their jobs. It's not like those of us who, our health insurance is to protect us if something happens. They're getting these injuries on the job.
And there's been, has there been like commensurate filings with the National Labor Relations Board on these complaints? And
both
OSHA has also been out there too, is my understanding?
Yeah, both San Jose and Santa Rosa both filed NLRB complaints. OSHA did, I think y'all had Tony on before. OSHA did, fine them. Again, in the grand scheme of things, you can look at the amount of money that they're fined and be like, that wasn't a lot of money, but it takes a lot to get OSHA to actually fine anybody. So, I think that was something, to validate what these workers are going through.
And in terms of unionization or organizing pushes, that's still going on at the facility that's still open.
As far as I know, yes.
And I saw also reading that workers were basically retaliated against, or they were unable to take sick days. Was that also part of some of the complaints that were filed?
Yeah, I think, there were a lot of complaints filed. That may have been one of them. I know another one was that workers who were taking legitimate breaks to go support other workers were fired and things like that. So I know that we're expecting results from the NLRB. I know with the San Jose facility soon. And I apologize. I'm more of the activist end of, one of the organizations that called for the boycott of Amy's, whereas Unite Here and the Teamsters are the ones who were intimately working with the workers and who ended up filing these complaints.
Sure. So can you tell us more about the boycott of Amy's?
Yeah, I mean, my organization, we're a vegan food justice organization, so we promote veganism for the animals, but we also advocate for farm workers and other social justice issues and human rights issues. And for us, it was, as somebody who went vegan for the animals, because I didn't want to contribute to the suffering of non-human animals, it was incredibly upsetting to find out the way that Amy's was treating their workers, because my compassion doesn't end at non-human animals. It extends to human animals as well. And so it made perfect sense for us as an organization who a company like Amy's is actually, reaching the same community, right? They're trying to they're getting their vegan and vegetarian food out there. That it was up to us to make sure that we took a stand for the workers and let them know that we're standing by them through all of this. And we're not going anywhere, and that we want Amy's to, meet with the workers who are having these issues and these grievances and make amends and make sure, that they allow them to organize. Amy's claimed that they didn't close the facility in San Jose because of the union organizing. My statement to them is, then tell all of your employees you support them unionizing and let them unionize as a way to prove
right,
that you didn't close that facility because of their organizing. So we've been calling for a boycott since the beginning of this year after speaking with the workers, and they've only continued, especially after the workers were laid off in San Jose, asking for people to boycott Amy's.
How many production facilities do they have around the country? Do you know?
They had the one in San Jose. They have Santa Rosa. I believe the other one is in Pocatello, Idaho. And I think that they've also talked about maybe going out to New York as well. But those are the ones that we know of. There may be more, but those are the ones that we know of.
When you're trying to orchestrate a boycott of this nature to pressure the company to treat their workers like
human beings,
like human beings,
right?
What do you do? Like, what are the mechanisms which you can get out there? Do you contact, let's say, in this instance, because the product is so closely associated with I don't know if you would call it an ideology about in terms of respect for non-human animals, but there seems to be almost like a built-in network, or at least a cohort, as opposed to sort of just like the broad masses. Like I would imagine that if I'm vegan or vegetarian, there is one of 5 or 10 websites or publications, or I'm hitting certain areas in the same way you could say that, if I'm a liberal or a leftist, but almost more specific, because maybe I'm looking for specifically vegan, recipes, or, what are good foods to get, my protein from, or something like that. How do you go about a boycott in this space?
Well, we use social media, that's for sure. And we make sure that we let everybody know what's happening through social media, through art networks. We encourage other, there have been some, vegan businesses, other vegan organizations that have talked about it. Not as many as we'd like, admittedly, but we do try to get it out there as much as possible. And we did write to Amy's, and they gave us a form letter response, even though we are part of the community that they're trying to sell to. And so that spoke volumes, and I think that for those of us who thought this company truly lived to the values that they claim to have about calling their workers family and caring about the environment and sustainability, they've proven otherwise. They've proven that is all a facade, and that they don't truly care about, definitely not the sustainability of the lives of their workers.
Where can people get more information about this boycott and maybe tell other people about it?
Sure. We have information on our website, which is foodispower.org. Food is ispower, power.org. And you can see we have a whole page about Amy's. We have lots of articles that have talked about it. We have a link to the petition. We also have a sign-on letter. We have over 50 organizations that have signed on to a community letter supporting the workers at Amy's. And this is from unions to vegan organizations to human rights organizations who are stepping up and standing with the workers at Amy's Kitchen.
What is the metric, or is there a metric? Is there a manifestation that, obviously, look, Amy's sales may, I've never followed the progression of their sales, but they may perceive a lack of growth to be, something that is an anomaly. They may see a dip in sales. Like, how do you communicate to Amy's if your boycott is effective? How do you communicate that it's hurting their sales? That it's this as opposed to, I don't know, people have found in, some other product that they like or something.
Yeah, I think that for us, it's more a matter of connecting their reputation than is their sales. That when people think of Amy's now, instead of thinking of that frozen burrito, they think about those workers who were forced to wrap 14 burritos in a minute. And for this company not to think that that would harm them. We want that Amy's reputation to be connected with the pain of the workers and the suffering of the workers. And this company has done nothing. Keep in mind, this is a company that is privately owned. It is simply up to that owner to make the decision to do right by his workers. So this isn't shareholders having to do anything. This isn't a board. This is one owner who has the ability to make this decision. So I think for us, it's more making sure that when people see Amy's in that freezer, they think differently about that company than perhaps they used to.
Well, we will put a link to foodispower.org. Lauren Ornelas, founder and president of the Food Empowerment Project. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for covering this issue and for having Tony on before. We just definitely need everybody to know what's happening. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to head into the fun half of the program, wherein we will take your phone calls. We will read your IMs. We will go over some sound clips that have and video clips that have been floating around out there for the past couple of days. I know, we're really breaking with tradition. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only help this show survive and thrive, you get the free half free of commercials. And then you get the fun half. That's 4 things I just rattled right off. 4 different benefits to becoming a member. 5, you also help other folks who may be going through some financial stress become members too. When you become a member, you end up supporting somebody who might be not as fortunate as you at this moment in time in terms of finances. So jointhemajorityreport.com is the website. Also, don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. If you use the coupon code majority, you know what happens. You get 10% off. They're a great co-op based in Madison, Wisconsin. They may come up in the context that we're going to have Ari Berman on. He's written a piece in Mother Jones about Wisconsin being this sort of laboratory over the past really 13, 14 years, since 2010, of attacking on democracy. That was a Koch brother project through the Americans for Prosperity. And we'll talk about that. That is, I mentioned that just because I went out there in 2010 for the big protest against Scott Walker, and maybe it was 2011, and Just Coffee was giving out coffee to all the protesters for free.
Look at that.
Yep, they've been at it for quite a while. Emma, what's happening in the world of sports?
Well, we are going to tomorrow have our first ESPN OT stream over on the native channel, youtube.com/ESPN show, where Bradley and I will be in the heat of our competition season long, and through the Super Bowl, we're going to be picking against the spread. Bradley now has a 2-game lead on me because he went 3-0 this last week. It's honestly really annoying. So we'll be picking the games and also talking about probably Russell Wilson again, because apparently he leaked to the media that he was doing high knees in the aisle on the plane to London. He's
who cares more?
I mean, no one cares more. Yeah, and more. We'll be talking about that, and then also on the last episode we previewed the World Series, other NFL news, talked a bit about the NBA as well. So check that out, youtube.com/ESPN show.
Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian media universe?
Yeah, last night released an episode for Left Reckoning with Brett of Rev Left Radio on MAGA communism that I have just learned was watched by one of the young lads trying to do MAGA communism on his stream, and so there's a lot of upset folks saying that, you know, we kind of criticize them for not really doing anything and kind of following in like basically the LaRouche line of things, to the point where they're going to their conferences now. But so yeah, check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. But yeah, I'm gonna go read some comments.
I went back and watched at least a little tiny clip of one of the Halloween shows that we did, that where it wasn't a right wing, but it was a sort of a post-left show. And one of the lines from that was talking about just a series of references to shows that did a response to another show that did a response to that show, who was responding to the response of someone else who's doing that responding show.
Infinite regress.
And it was, and that was from like, that must have been, we did that in 2017. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, and it's gotten a lot worse since then.
Yeah,
you know what? Like,
right?
it's, you know, I should just say right now, we're not planning on doing anything for Halloween. That is not, we're just not. In fact, to the extent that we have anything planned, I think we have our first in-studio guest in 3 or 4 years.
It's a big one too.
Christian Smalls is coming.
I didn't know if we were telling people.
Well, I just, you know, why not?
We had to reschedule because you were sick.
Yep.
And so now Chris Smalls is coming back.
Chris Smalls is coming in to the studio on Monday. He's going to be the first in-studio guest we've had. Well, I guess Saul was here.
And
unforgettable performance
around
from Saul.
Christmas time last year, we had Brandon came in, but I mean, he's not a guest; he's part of the show. But he came in studio.
That's true. That's true.
That was fun.
But maybe what we'll do is also tag that on, clip it and tag on that. Michael was pretty funny in that, and so that might be fun to do. But we'll see. All right, heading into the fun half. 646-257-3920. See you there.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back, and the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back, and the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
alpha males are back.
Snowflakes has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back.
And the Africans are black African.
And the alpha males are
black.
And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them.
Things I do for the bigger game plan.
By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back.
Africans are black.
Alpha males are black.
Africans
are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
So we should say on the IMs, it being the fun half, that Nico on the IM says downplaying Halloween makes us certain there will be a Halloween special show, just so you know. And I am aware of that, which is why as soon as I started talking about it, I had to announce that Chris Smalls was coming on, because that would be that's too big of a pitch to, because I never talk about who's going to be on the show in the future.
Yeah.
But I realized I had to fill the void of the expectation that we were going to do something quirky on Halloween. And I also am aware that even my doing this also creates that expectation. You see, I'm in a catch-22 situation.
I wouldn't want to do that. I mean, it was so your guys' and Michael's thing that, like, I just wouldn't want to participate. I feel like it was such a wonderful thing you guys did, I mean, I just wouldn't want to step on any toes.
With Michael here, too.
Right.
Bear at home 2. Sam, would you prefer to debate a libertarian or a Steven Crowder fan? I am agnostic. I either, both, simultaneously or separately.
I mean, Steven Crowder's fans are probably 12 on
or
average.
50.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the sad thing about it, is he's got 50-year-old men thinking.
He really does.
It's hilarious.
Well, divorce guys.
The thing, exactly. And the thing you do with
this
Crowder
is my
fans,
cohort. I know these people. I know these people, and they're mad. They're mad at. They project their anger at their ex-wives onto all women, and then anyone who is in any way marginalized, because they feel like they've gotten screwed in some way.
Yeah.
And the thing is that with a Steven Crowder fan, it wouldn't be quite as fun, because it's just sort of like they're not trying to sell their vision of the world. Like a libertarian is really trying to sell their vision of a world, and they almost to a person, well, at least in my experience, have not actually thought this through the whole way. A Crowder fan doesn't even start to think about it. It just, they make a proclamation. It's almost like arguing. They're both religious fanatics, but one is just so fundamentalist that it doesn't matter, that it doesn't comport with reality. They just want. They're just like, I want.
Right.
We just disagree as to whether women are full people or not. That's it. We just disagree. And from a debate standpoint, there's not it doesn't get that interesting, but it would be fun.
A fun thing to do if you're engaged with a Crowder fan is to ask them how old they are. Because either way, it's going to be embarrassing for them.
Exactly. It's snowy in Toronto. It's my birthday. I just started a new job after moving to Toronto, and I get to work from home today. Can I get a shofar, please? Sure.
Happy birthday.
Maryland Mailman, will there be a show election night? There sure will be. We're going to get pizza. We're going to have alcohol. I anticipate I'm going to be pretty drunk by the end of the evening. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think it's going to go well for the Democrats at this point.
Yeah.
Things seem to be trending in the wrong direction. And I don't know.
But on the bright side for the viewers, what we always say is, Sam, you have a great talent of gaining more energy as the night goes on.
Yeah, your battery charges as you pedal, like one of those e-bikes.
When we were doing the Pennsylvania primary coverage, Sam was about to go right into another story. It was like 11:30, and Emma was like, "Okay, we have to wrap this up."
Yeah. We went to, I think, 1 a.m. on.
Oh no, I'm sure we'll go a little longer.
We're gonna go late.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
We may have to even do a late show on that following Wednesday. I'm not sure how we're gonna handle it. We'll see. All right, calling from a 503 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, my God. I can't believe I got in right away. First time, long time. This is Celeste from Portland, Oregon. And I was going to call in and talk about our candidate across the border, Joe Kent. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about this guy. He's a kind of a far-right chud who used to kind of street brawl with the Patriot Prayer folks around here. And he's a former Green Beret, former CIA, and all of this has been out in the open. And he was the one that defeated Jamie Herrera Butler in her primary. So
and she had voted for impeachment. Is that right?
She did, and she also was the one that told the press that Kevin McCarthy, I think it was, had said that they didn't like the crowd didn't appreciate Mike Pence as much as about. I can't remember what the threat was, but it was basically like, yeah.
He basically said Herrera Beutler leaked the comments that McCarthy told her that Trump basically said him and Pence weren't fighting hard enough to overturn the results, which is why they were coming to attack them, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she lost her race, and this guy, who is completely unqualified, he'd only lived in the district, I think, since 2019. It was basically selected by someone to run in this race. And no one, apparently, until this last week, a reporter from the Daily Beast finally looked into this company that claims to have employed him.
Yeah, he's
called American Enterprise Solutions.
Right, and he identified it a bunch of different times, and now it's just basically the indications that it's made up, right?
Well, and from what I understand, the guy's like he said he made like $100 and I don't know if it was like $130,000, $150,000, somewhere around there from this company, and the company doesn't exist. And so people are like, where'd the money come from? How do people know? Like, how did people know about his salary? Was that just they released their tax things, or?
Yeah, it was on his financial disclosure forms as American Enterprise Solutions with $115,000 both last year and this year. And his donations to other candidates was listing that as his employer. So after this news report came in, and all of our other local reporters were like, I wonder why nobody's ever looked into this before. So somebody started scrambling, and yesterday Joe Kent's campaign team came up with advanced enterprise solutions on his forms, which actually has a shell company called Advanced Enterprise Solutions in Reston, Virginia, an address that is just a virtual desk somewhere. So lots of questions about who's been paying Joe Kent.
I mean,
and
yeah.
Is he still working for the CIA? I have a feeling that he's kind of dumb enough that he got a fake business to say that he was a part of and just forgot the name and has just been putting it down wrong on all of his forms.
Only the best people for the CIA. I mean, has anybody actually looked into whether or not he actually worked for the CIA?
Yeah, that's been out, and he has a book out. His wife was killed in a roadside bomb.
Oh, jeez.
They were both in the Green Berets, or he was a Green Beret, and then he was in CIA, and so he wrote a book about all of this. So I would assume that his, some part of that would have been vetted at some point, but that story. But the who is American, in Reston, Virginia? Like, is that a defense contractor? Highly likely, or still CIA, or a partner of both. And there's a lot of people, going back to the earlier interview, around here are speculating that it's a Peter Thiel shell, which I kind of doubt. This guy's really militaristic and he's just kind of a street thug. He's not.
Why
like
would he
Peter
need a
Thiel type
shell,
guy.
right, for that kind of stuff? It seems shadier than that. I mean, Peter Thiel is pretty open about his investment in certain candidates. Did you, Celeste? Did you see that Tulsi was in town for Joe Kent recently?
Oh yeah. 2 days she spent with him, tooling around small towns in Southwest Washington.
Let me ask you this. Like, when Tulsi Gabbard comes in there, I mean, I guess it raises the profile. I would imagine like local news covered it, right? Does she?
Well, Portland News didn't cover it. They might have gotten a little more coverage up in Washington, but our news market is the same.
I just wonder,
Southwest Washington.
Does Tulsi Gabbard, and this is a sincere question, does she bring value to a candidate, or does her being with the candidate bring value to her? Like, usually it's both, right? I mean, everybody, but yeah. I just wonder in this instance, like, I guess if you're Joe Kent, you're like, anybody who's on Tucker Carlson can't be a bad thing for have them come campaign for me. I just wonder, like, locally, if that, I don't know.
I didn't really get that much coverage. I think this is kind of a solidification of a particular cadre. The Tucker Carlson military types. One of his staffers, one of Joe Kent's former staffers, came out in the OPB piece and said that he basically never, this fake job that he had, he never did any work for. So, his former staffers are out there saying that, he's always just been this grifter, basically.
Wow.
I don't know.
All right. Well, appreciate the phone call.
Yeah, so we don't know. I mean, the candidate that he's running against is doing a pretty good late stage campaign, out cutting wood with a chainsaw and doing things like that. But it's a pretty red district, and it has changed a little bit over the years. But Herrera Butler has endorsed the Democrat, which is interesting.
Right. Well, I hope Perez pulls it off.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks for the call.
All right. Cheers. Thanks.
Bye. Let's do this. We had talked about the leak of Dobbs, of the Dobbs decision that happened earlier, and I have contended that this leak came from a conservative on the court. And just as a refresher, there are, aside from different theories as to who had helped or didn't help in terms of releasing this, and whether the release of this was to lock in the 5 votes that were there, when we now know that John Roberts was attempting to lobby 5 of these right-wingers on the court, specifically Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett, attempting to lobby them to, instead of overturning Roe v. Wade, sort of half overturning it by simply signing on to Mississippi's 15-week ban, as opposed to blowing out the Roe v. Wade protections, the first individual right, in my awareness, that has been reversed by the Supreme Court. There were 2 other leaks that I want people to remember about this. Actually, play the Heritage Foundation.
So one of the most remarkable features about the court in an age of incessant leaks is the confidentiality that long covered its internal deliberations. Unfortunately, that changed this last term with the horrific and completely unprecedented leak of your draft majority opinion in Dobbs. How has the leak affected the
All right, pause this. Now, first off, there's a couple things that you know, as we analyze Alito's comments at this time, this is the first time he is addressing the leak. We have heard from Kagan, and we heard from, was it Roberts, has referenced the investigation. I don't know that we've heard from any other Supreme Court justice. Understand 2 things about that question from the Heritage Foundation guy. One, Alito completely aware that the question is coming. There is no way, no how, that Sam Alito is sitting on that stage without having questions beforehand. Absolutely not. Absolutely 100% guaranteed. And I would say, not just awareness of what questions are coming, but the placement. This is at the very end of the conversation. And I suspect done so that this is not lingering out there. But he clearly, and I would say that it's also quite possible that Alito specifically wanted this question at this time. Why would he want this question? We do not know where the investigation stands, although there was indication, I think, from Kagan about, a little while ago that we're a month out, maybe, or so, or something like that. Some reference. There's no way the announcement's going to come before the election. No way. Roberts is going to hold that until after the election. It is not the case that this leak is unprecedented. First of all, there has been, there was one time where there was a front running of a brief that got out. But in terms of leaks as to what's being deliberated, this is actually the second one that I can point to. One was in 2012 when the conservatives were very angry that John Roberts split the baby on the Affordable Care Act. You may not recall, but in the Affordable Care Act went in front of the Supreme Court in a case that, and I sat out in a building across the street from there and interviewed maybe a dozen Supreme Court constitutional professors. And they all thought the entire thing was more or less bunk. However, Roberts basically said they don't have to expand Medicaid, which was, people thought was the most ridiculous part of that entire thing. Like, it's a federal program.
Right.
The feds can decide what they do with that program, and they were paying for it. And then there was a leak. I think it was to the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post. I can't remember which paper. Talking about the deliberations and the anger that John Roberts was the one who pushed it. I mean, this was a concerted effort by conservatives to punish John Roberts publicly. Remember, these people's brains don't operate like ours. So much of this is about status and legacy for these people, particularly for John Roberts. In the weeks prior to the leak of the brief, there was an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, It is a conservative publication about the deliberations that were going on. And again, going after John Roberts, who was attempting to sway them. So the leak, this was not an unprecedented leak. It was unprecedented to see a working decision. But it wasn't unprecedented in the sense that this decision's deliberations were leaked to the Wall Street Journal enough so that they could actually write an editorial based upon those leaks. Okay, and this is important because if you want to determine who is the leaker, you look as to where they're leaking to is a big part of it.
And the Wall Street Journal was also involved in this latest leak. Is that not the case? I mean, the original brief was leaked to Politico, but wasn't there some sort of follow-up about...
they had more information on it as well. And so now, why would Alito want to address this now? Again, there's no way this question is asked if Sam Alito doesn't want this question. My speculation is he wants to set the table for how they're going to respond if the investigation is over and it turns out that it is someone who was, let's say, on Alito's clerk staff. What would you characterize it if someone he knew, without his permission, leaked this? Let's listen.
Term with the horrific and completely unprecedented leak of your draft majority opinion in Dobbs. How has the leak affected the court?
It was a grave betrayal of trust by somebody, and it was a shock because nothing like that had happened in the past. So
pause it for 1 second. I'm sorry. We're going to go back. I want you to listen to what he is saying. Everything is in the passive voice. It was a shock. To whom? It was a betrayal. Of whom? He could say of the court. He could say to all of us. He's being very non-specific here. Because I think on one hand, he doesn't want to indicate who this person might be at this time. But he also wants to be able to set the table that he has been victimized by this. Go back a little bit.
In Dobbs, how has the leak affected the court?
It was a grave betrayal of trust by somebody, and it was a shock because nothing like that had happened in the past. So it certainly changed the atmosphere at the court for the remainder of last term. The leak also made those of us who were thought to be in the majority in support of overruling Roe and Casey targets for assassination, because it gave people a rational reason to think they could prevent that from happening by killing one of us. And we know that a man has been charged with attempting to kill Justice Kavanaugh. It's a pending case, so I won't say anything more about that. But that was last term. Now we're in a new term. I think that all of us want to, all of the justices, and I think the people who work in the building, we have a wonderful staff, I'll add that, want things to get back to normal, the way they were before all this last term, before COVID, get back to normal to the greatest degree.
All right, we're not there. Okay, he's no longer talking about it. Now, he brings up this unique circumstance where the conservatives are being targeted for assassination.
Oh, what was them?
Well, I mean, we don't want that.
No, we don't. But I mean,
we don't want that. But it's not that unique.
No.
Put up this headline. You'll recall that Sonia Sotomayor was targeted by a gunman. He doesn't contextualize that whatsoever. He is answering that question, and he is getting that question because he is starting to build the foundation of an argument that he was victimized by this, even though it may not appear that he was victimized by this in the first instance. That's what it appears to me. I don't know. It's a speculation and largely irrelevant at this moment, but it's the fun half.
So then I guess if it is someone on his staff or someone on one of the conservative justices' staffs, then what is the whole reasoning behind the "we are targets of assassination" tact?
You're about to throw somebody under the bus.
Right.
And you want to claim that you were just as victimized, if not more so, by this. I mean, it was a betrayal.
I know, but isn't the if the contention is that the leak was a way to benefit the conservative justices and kind of provide some sort of softer landing for once Roe is overturned?
Well, it wasn't so much that it was a softer landing. The reason why it benefited the conservative justices, it was a way to discipline Kavanaugh and Coney Barrett.
Okay.
And this was not, I believe, this leak, a media strategy. This was a strategy to lock in those 5 votes and end John Roberts' attempt to lobby them and sway them. Because it's one thing for them to take the step going forward and begin to chop away at Roe. It's another to be perceived as having already gotten rid of Roe and then walking it back. And I think there's the use of like betrayal and the idea that this was only detrimental to the conservatives. Those two things suggest to me that he is trying to create a narrative that even though it was by somebody who was it's somewhat aligned with the majority, it ended up being a betrayal and they were victimized by it.
Okay. Well, I mean, they're conservative, so they're going to victimize themselves regardless. But I am interested in the future of this leaker, right? If they were, Alito is presenting this and lying publicly, it seems, to
this is all speculation.
Right. Okay. Probably lying, speculating that he's lying publicly about his opinion on the betrayal, if that's the case. If the effort was to lock in Roberts so that they were able to finally overturn Roe. Then if they excommunicate this staffer or this clerk...
I've already made this prediction too.
You've said that they're going to go get hired by the...
18 months and...
So it doesn't matter what he's saying now. They're going to huff and puff and blow the house down. And then once the dust settles, conservative...
They're going to announce this sometime in December around Christmas time. It's going to come out. It's going to be a story for 2 weeks. That may even be an exaggeration. It's going to be a story for 2 days. And it's the guy's going to be chastised, and then you're going to read a piece in the New Republic in sometime in like late 2023, which is like that guy Jim Stevenson is now at the Heritage Foundation and also maybe a fellowship.
It's quite a gamble. It's quite a gamble to then have your name forever associated with this leak. And in conservative circles, I guess, like at the very least, maybe they have a respect for you behind the scenes, but having a public kind of shaming spectacle, that this clerk, if your theory is right, will always be associated with this forever.
Oh yeah, and and that clerk is going to be heralded for it.
But publicly shamed by Alito?
Just in that moment. But then they forget. Redemption story. I mean, none of this sticks. None of this sticks to them.
I know.
None of it. There's a second woman coming out right now who's going to talk about Herschel Walker and pushing him to have an abortion. And it's not. If he wins, that's all they care. That's all they care. That's all they care. Ollie North, perfect example. Golden's Oyster Cult. They promised to throw the leaker under the bus now for future conservative TV success like Ollie North. I mean, this is the way they go. You're applying standards to them that are
I'm not even applying it. I'm just trying to work it out in your head. Like any kind of like logical understanding would be like, it's very difficult for to have the conservative justices who are at the pinnacle of like what conservative legal minds actually want to achieve throw you under the bus publicly and hope that you're going to have a career in conservative law. But as you say,
I'll tell you what
he's
gonna
delivered, and I believe what you're saying. I just feel like it's a larger leap than some of the more craven things that these guys
written statement from Alito. I cannot express the level of betrayal that I feel at this moment. This is someone I trusted, could have never known. This led to all sorts of problems for myself and my fellow justices in the majority. I cannot express the level of disappointment that I have. And that will be the last thing he ever says about it. And then, next time he goes over to the Heritage Foundation or wherever it is, like, hey, nice to see you. How's the kids? Everything good? Oh, yeah, everything's great. In fact, I've just been nominated to be Solicitor General under Ron DeSantis' administration. God. I mean, honestly, like, do you think they're beyond that?
Yeah.
Oh, my God, no.
No.
Not at all. I mean, they wouldn't make him Solicitor General because, maybe but maybe they would.
You're not going to put him out in the cold, though.
No. Oh, God, no. That person's going to be very warm and toasty. Maybe a federal judge. They'll give him a federal judgeship. Depends on how young that person is.
Right.
Speaking of little toadies and cronies, Blake Masser running in Arizona. This is footage. Is this from just yesterday?
So it came out. It's a Tucker Carlson original about Blake Masters. This footage is from the day after his debate with Mark Kelly and right before Trump comes to stump for him in Arizona.
So what is Tucker Carlson putting out this stuff for? Is this supposed to help Blake Masters?
I think it's just like an inspiring, behind the scenes campaign documentary.
You see this in sports now, where like everyone's making documentaries about themselves, and they're basically just like propaganda films. Like we basically democratized propaganda films a little bit more, and now Tucker's doing it for Blake Masters.
They're
like
learning,
Last Dance.
or it's like the Justin Bieber documentary about himself. That's what they're doing.
But I wonder if this is to motivate the Trump base here to show. Like, here he is showing a certain amount of fealty. Here is Blake Masters on the phone with Donald Trump. When this took place right after his debate with Mark Kelly, right? Yes. So this was like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and we should say Carlson has a very strong focus right now on Arizona in particular. He's been stumping for Carrie Lake and having her on for long segments speaking about her. So I wonder what he sees as like an opportunity here. But
Mr. President, how are you, sir? Doing great.
Beautiful music.
I got a lot of complaints about that. I don't know what you did with the debate, but I heard you did great on the debate, but a bad election answer. You got a lot of support. You got to stay with those people.
Absolutely, we stay with those people. And it was a pleasure to put Mark Kelly on the ropes.
Yeah, no, he did. He's terrible, and you were excellent.
Well, thank you.
How do you feel? How do you feel about how you're doing?
It's great. We've got the momentum. I think the race is tied right now. And the debate showed all the rhinos in D.C. They wanted to say, "Oh, Blake's unelectable," and then I just stomped Kelly. So I think.
Pause it for 1 second. Can I just also be clear that we're not putting this music in there?
No.
This body language doesn't.
It's also super weird. Like, oh, thank you for this call. Let me put it on speakerphone. And incidentally, you're going to be on. I mean, let's be honest, folks. Donald Trump is not. This is staged.
Yeah.
It's staged. So just to understand that. Now, Trump can't help himself but to say, great job, but you had a bad election answer. But
he has his hand on his head and like tears in his eyes. It's like the John Krasinski
He looks
meme.
so moved.
And and the music behind it, it's like a romantic movie after they've reunited after 12 years. We've been apart for so long in the war.
You miss the sound of my voice, buddy.
And this is like where it's like the slow build up, and then all of a sudden, like, comes out of the door and they hug each other.
They kiss, yeah.
right now. And the debate showed all the rhinos in DC. They wanted to say, "Oh, Blake's unelectable," and then I just stomped Kelly. So I think now even the
He was terrible. You were great. He was terrible. Is Peter Thiel helping much, or what happened?
he is a little bit more behind the scenes. I don't know what happened there, but money's flowing in now.
Oh, is he sending some money now? He's giving you I hope.
I think so.
so bad.
And I think it's going to flow in now.
Tell Peter to help you. Help.
Well, I'll tell him you said that.
1 yard line.
Yeah.
If you want to get across the line, you got to go stronger in that one thing. That was the one thing you like complaints about. Look at Carrie. Carrie's winning with very little money. And if they say, "How is your family?" she says, "The election was rigged and stolen." You'll lose if you go soft. You're going to lose that at the base.
I'm not going soft.
I've never come in to do a rally where the person lost. Not once. I mean, it's been pretty amazing.
No, I'm just sure we're going to beat this guy.
You take care of yourself, and you're gonna be a rocket ship tomorrow. You watch. Have a good time, Blake. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bye-bye.
So long, man. Bye.
You did great in the debate, but not like Carrie.
I didn't think I went soft on the election.
Certainly not on the call.
Yeah, you should
Not
have said
soft
that when
at
you were
all
there.
on the
Yeah,
call.
I was fully hard that whole time.
I was so hard. I'm hard right now, sir. I got to tell you, I'm not going soft at all.
I love
Yeah.
that when he says you're going to be a rocket ship, what he means is because I'm going to be there, you're going to be flying high.
Well, it's also just a weird metaphor to use against a astronaut.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, I don't know what to say. Like,
I'm not going soft.
I'm not going.
To the moon, Blake.
He's doing this thing, right? This is the thing. Doesn't look in the eyes and just does this is signify like
Curtsy.
I also like that Trump's statement was basically, he was just like, Carrie Lake is so much more of a psychopath than you are.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta be way crazier.
She
You're
doesn't.
gonna lose that base.
She doesn't even like her family.
She won't even talk about her family
You
or
can't
her
leave
children.
when he says you can't leave those people behind. That's a very revealing way of how he looks at those base. Like
Yeah.
they need you to talk about how I was cheated. Okay.
And I did like the one moment where you kind of see the pain behind Blake's eyes when Trump says, like, "What's going on with Peter Thiel? He's helping more behind the scenes. I don't know what's
I don't
going
know
on
what was going on with
that."
What's wild to me is like what we saw was embarrassing, and there was a lot of cuts.
Yeah, I know it. I wonder if that was in there to sort of like embarrass Peter Thiel.
Well, it's kind of to publicize that he's not doing enough.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of the realm at all. I think it might highlight that he's not being strong enough. And
But the
supporting
hilarity is that Peter's not embarrassed in that. It's Blake Masters who's publicly groveling that Daddy
It's like,
won't give him
I
money
think it's
anymore.
flowing now. I think it's flowing. How inspiring! How inspiring of a political document is that? It's like I think the money's flowing now.
Say it's flowing.
Slowly play reverb
God.
guitar.
That is just absolutely nuts.
More from that studio, Tucker. Thanks.
I mean, they must have a theory. That is really something. I can't for the life of me imagine what it is. Talia from Tampa. Hey guys, hope my email explaining semiconductor sanctions was helpful. If you need more or new info comes, I'll be sure to send it to you. Yeah, we got to dig that out. I'm sorry. I missed that, and so I'll look for it this time. Oh boy, this is just too long. You don't need to read this aloud. I can't. There's no way. It's a 7-paragraph thing. I can't. Sorry. Mental health. Hold on for a second. We're getting slammed by Buster's. Okay. Not gonna read that.
Good catch.
I'm like, yeah, I know. I've had to stop 5 of these things where I'm just like, Mr. Natch. Abortion is between a woman, her doctor, and local political leaders, and State Senator Bunch Huggins has some thoughts on your uterus. Trans tomboy. It was really upsetting to watch Fetterman struggle with aphasia, knowing how Republicans would use it against him.
Yeah.
You could see he knew when the wrong words were coming out, and I can only imagine the frustration one feels when the pressure and stakes are that high. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how people react to it. Like, I mean, I think like me as someone who is a political analyst, I see that, and I think that's going to be problematic on some level for people who watch the debate directly. I don't know how many people are, and like I say, my barometer in terms of what low information voters are getting is always like, well, that's why I listen to that AP News in the morning. So I've mentioned this many times before. Some people have suggested that it's going to make people sympathetic to him.
It's hard to say.
I would be surprised by that, but I guess it's conceivable. But
I'm curious what voters in Pennsylvania who are like not nearly as like plugged in politically or as like
I'd be
news
shocked
savvy.
if we don't see some type of focus.
Yeah, like
test.
of like what his debate performance did for like kind of low info.
We should find that outfit that did the focus test.
I'll take a look.
Yeah.
I'll take a look for sure.
Manasseh, I'm honestly really happy the moderators didn't acknowledge him as Dr. Oz and instead said Mr. Oz the whole time. I don't know how that's debates work, but it felt like a tiny moral victory when the rest of the night felt like an earthquake.
Manasseh.
Professional dumpster fire. For my criticisms of Fetterman going to Albright and being a Sheets guy, I genuinely believe he wants to raise the standard of living in Pennsylvania, something of our rural areas desperately need. Many of our small towns were ravaged by the opioid crisis and have sold public municipal infrastructure due to bankruptcy. Pennsylvanians need help, and I do not believe Oz wants to do anything to help any Pennsylvania other than those living in the main line. I mean, I guess we'll see.
I mean, look, we'll see. Also, the whole narrative about Biden being in his basement and not being able to like actually communicate didn't end up affecting the results really for Biden. But I mean, that was a very particular set of circumstances in the wake of the pandemic. So I don't know. I feel terribly for Fetterman. It's just it's just awful timing. I mean, It was tough. It was tough to see that because he is such an excellent candidate in my opinion. But yeah, we will have to see.
Tomolo Fink, I can't read this whole thing, but I'll read the first paragraph. Happy Friends Day Wednesday, folks. I need to issue a correction due to the recent crash in the value of the pound. The fees charged by Rishi Sunak's high school now equate to a mere $50,000 per academic year, not $70,000 as I suggested yesterday on Monday. Also, you may recall I was planning to start a podcast to shit on Democrats 24/7 due to my slight disagreement with one of Lula's policies. I've come up with a regular segment called The Twitter Report. If I get $500 worth of super chaps, then I will get psychotically angry over one of Emma's tweets, because apparently going on rants about factually correct tweets from a leftist woman is activism now, and definitely not right-wing misogyny in a paper-thin leftist veil. Star Fox. Have you covered all the cop in Woburn that resigned last week after it came out he was heavily involved with planning Unite the Right? Also, photos and video of him being a bodyguard for Richard Spencer that weekend. The group Ignite the Right did a lot of the great network that HuffPost then ran with. Fucking pegs, dude. I did not see that. Afro Mang. Hey, MR Crew, you talked about a solution to the housing crisis. Lower home costs by building more homes. Can you walk me through how this works in practice? Is this for public housing? Does the government subsidies through this public-private... I don't know. I mean, like I said, I know that there are housing experts out there who could answer the mechanism, but broadly speaking, we need to encourage more building. That may deal with like having zoning, allow for more density, but we also need federal resources to help do it. I mean, the problem is not that we don't know how to do this. Let's be clear. Whether the solution is different depending on the locality. We have X number 100, or thousands of empty hotel rooms or whatever it is. The issue is not that we don't know how to do it. The issue is that we do not have the political will to do it.
I mean, what
To
was
the
it?
extent that there is any political will, it is let's just arrest these people and pretend they don't exist, or let's put them on a bus and send them to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so the specifics of the policy, after the election, when we have a little bit more space, we'll seek out some people. Maybe we should have somebody on, or a couple of guests, to talk about different ideas on what you could do to deal with the unhoused in this country. But understand, the primary obstacle to dealing with the unhoused is a lack of desire or political will to deal with these people in a humane way.
We had a guest on from Houston who had a pilot program that was essentially funded by an Obama-era program that just gave homes, basically paid for apartments for unhoused people, and they've been doing it for around a decade. And they didn't means test, or not means test, I should say, drug test, or say you have to go through a program first before you are able to apply for this housing. They just did it, and they've reduced homelessness in Houston by 70%. So, there's a lot that we can do, but the solution is housing. And the real estate developers in these big cities have just so much power that they don't want these kinds of programs, because they want all the available space for them to be able to build up housing that they can make money off of. And we also need to begin to have a national conversation about building more public housing, because since '98 there's been a ban via the Faircloth Amendment on any federal funds for public housing, and AOC and Bernie have sort of spoken about it before, but there needs to be a national federal push for public housing as well, as a way to get some of this under control.
Country Mouse Tech. Living in Claremont, New Hampshire, the Bulldog strategy made me nervous. News about a tightening race, and I think Hassan is going to lose to a lunatic.
Really?
Jets from the West. Hi, all, and it seems things could be looking bleak out here in Clark County, Nevada. I talked to a teachers union rep about a week ago. One of my biggest concerns was how big my class size were getting. 48 was my biggest until they moved a few out. Now, biggest is 46 with other classes, low 40s. Essentially, the union rep told me Nevada Department of Education waived class size restrictions for Clark County, only limiting them to the fire code restrictions. That's insane. 50 kids in a class. It's insane.
Can't get an education like that.
But it's probably COVID policy why kids are falling behind in this country.
Right.
Humpty, we should say, there has been yet to be a study that has shown any type of correlation between lockdowns, remote learning, and these problems. One of the other answers could be we just went through a pandemic, and kids, the level of anxiety that kids have dealt with is through the roof. I can attest to that.
Yeah, I mean, that would stand to reason, that, and that's what's also leading to certain rise in crime statistics. We had a pandemic and we don't take care of people.
Mm-hmm.
Humpty Hump Day. David Sachs, more like David Sucks, am I right? Todd Ferguson, anecdotal evidence, Fetterman Oz debate reactions. I work at a suburban jewelry store with a lot of older conservative women as customers. All of them so far have expressed sympathy and empathy for Fetterman. Interesting. I see a lot of YouTubers boosting how bad Fetterman looked in terms of his recovery. Sam, as a self-proclaimed propagandist, do you think it's the duty of leftist media not to play into that? I mean, I think you have to acknowledge that from the perspective of people who look at debates as, from a performance standpoint, and then assume that that's what people are going to take away from it, that Fetterman came off poorly. I mean, I just think you have to acknowledge it. But I do think also, and I think and I feel like we I do this with debates all the time. Even when I think that my preferred candidate did better, you always got to look really on there's really two things that you have to follow that with. One, the spin is as important, if not more so important, to the extent that, debates can have any impact anyways. And two, that really hard to predict how a general audience is going to respond to something like this. You know, it's really hard. And so like I say, like I would not have necessarily predicted that a lot of older conservative women would be sympathetic to him there. But when you say it, maybe it makes sense to me. Like, oh, here's a guy who is a little scary to me because he looks like, Lurch or something like that. But to see him going through the same problems that I know people, I've known people who go through, maybe that's humanizing. I don't know. I mean, I really do think that we need to see at least, some like polling or focus testing or something. Kozlowski from Nebraska. Howdy, Majority Report. Not a single person asked me if I would run fast in my new shoes today. Being an adult is stupid. Anywho, speaking of stupid things, Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse might be appointed president of the University of Florida. I was curious what his strategy would be after the Jan 6th impeachment. I thought he would just simply ignore it until 2026 and hope everyone forgot. But instead, this guy who got more votes than any other politician in Nebraska history, including the governor and Trump, might just leave. If you're in Florida, I would recommend joining the protest against this appointment. Hitchens Ghost. Hi, I'm our crew. I work in Sacramento with 3 conservatives who consider themselves to be moderate. In response to the issues of homelessness, 2 of the 3 sincerely believe we should flood the streets with fentanyl. We've discussed it many times, and I've appealed to their humanity, hoping they'd back off. But they absolutely hate these poor people on the streets.
Jeez. So, like, that suggesting to flood the streets with fentanyl so people die.
Population control, yeah.
Oh, great.
They claim unhoused people would refuse any help offered by the government, so eradication is seriously on the table. It's hard to carry on normal while knowing these people are monsters in the inside.
That is wild.
I mean, that's how they feel. They don't want homeless people to be in their eye line, and it bothers them to see people who are suffering. And so instead of just like having a human response to that, they literally want them dead. They want them dead. They wouldn't say it out loud. Maybe they'll say it behind the scenes. It's the same things that we talk about with trans kids. They don't want them to exist. They don't want to see them. They want them to either be in the closet, conform, be in the closet, or kill yourself. That's how they feel, and they wouldn't say it publicly, but it's the case. It's like that Texas woman that said, "I'm mad that my kids can't bully gay and trans kids anymore." That's how they feel.
Exterminationism, man.
Yep. And even for those who don't want them exterminated, it is eliminationist.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's like they can exist, but I don't want to see them.
Put them in an institution, just like...
Do you have like an underground warehouse?
Well, that's the thing. It's a warehouse because it's not even an institution.
Yeah.
Because that would involve publicly financing,
care and stuff like that.
Care for people. I mean, that's, and to be clear too, like the idea that the police are the solution for this is, you're just basically saying we need someone to take them to the warehouse.
And yeah, when people say like, yeah, you'll see journalists say like, where are the cops when this is happening? Well, they're probably sitting on their ass, having a slow response time to send people a message for, criticizing them 2 years ago.
Well, it also is like, this is not a strategy. It is a strategy. We could just arrest everybody, but why stop at people who are unhoused? Let's also just arrest people who are living in poverty. Well, we sort of do that.
Yeah, kind of.
What about people who are living? We have over 500,000 people in the city who live in public housing. We could save on that if we just put them into jail.
Well, they're potentially homeless too. It's a preemptive arrest.
I mean, we could just expand this theory to a lot of things. And for those of us, hopefully, we're one of them, who are living on the outside of these prison warehouses, think of like what it would do. We got a problem with traffic? Let's arrest certain percentage of drivers.
I mean, this in a context of us being the number one in terms of raw numbers jailer of human beings, and in terms of like just the racial sort of equity portion of that, arresting black people at a higher rate than apartheid South Africa did.
That's the point. Like, that's why we're doing that already for a certain percentage of our population. And when we say the way you deal with the homelessness, just arrest them all. Arrest them all. That is an extension of what we look to the police to do. We can either, and on some level, it's also an extension of what we look to schools to do. We have these problems that we decide we're going to live with, or we're not going to do anything about as a society in terms of addressing the causes of this problem. The reason why the vast majority of people are unhoused, the reason why the vast majority of those unhoused people are unhoused is because they cannot afford a place to live. Now, there may have been, in some instances, maybe in some, many, other things that contributed to their inability to make money to house themselves. And it may have become a cascading spiral. But the number one but for in terms of unhoused people is that they don't have a house.
We just talked about it in the context of
Houston.
of Houston, I just mentioned, but Finland, right? Finland, when Bernie Sanders interviewed that Finnish politician, they only have around 4,000 people who are homeless in the entire country. And that the countries around the population of New York City, how many homeless people are here in New York City? I mean, they provide housing for people. Other countries provide these kinds of services and healthcare services. So if you have mental health issues, you can get that taken care of. And so it honestly, it's just people naturalizing capitalism and then blaming human beings for bearing the brunt of it and just offsetting their anger about a system onto the people who are the most vulnerable in our society.
And we see this in so many places, especially in New York City, especially under Eric Adams, that poverty is just criminalized, and poverty then as a result becomes expensive. Being poor becomes expensive. If you're a vendor selling fruit in the subway and Eric Adams doesn't want you to do that anymore, you no longer have a job and you probably have a fine to pay, or you're in jail and you have bail to pay to get out. And then after you get out, you can't do your job because Eric Adams says you can't do it anymore. You hop a turnstile. $2.50 puts you in jail and you probably have to pay bail that you can't pay because you tried to get out of a $2.50 MetroCard swipe. I mean, it is prohibitively expensive to be subject to the criminal justice system when you don't have any money and people don't allow you to participate in the workforce or have a home. And we judge societies based on how they treat their most vulnerable. You look at homeless people in this country, you look at the incarcerated people in this country, disabled people in this country, trans people of color, and they're all in one way or another treated like less than human by a lot of different people, and a lot of people mostly in power.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well said.
All right, let's play this Charlie Kirk clip. This clip number 9. There's a two-step here that's going on in terms of transphobia, and frankly, we saw this in terms of Islamophobia. Remember, 10 years ago, when Islam was in the history of the world's, what was it? Worst idea, the motherlode of bad ideas. And it was nearly inevitable that we were facing an existential threat from Islam in this country and the world. All of Western society was facing an inevitable threat, an existential threat from Islam. Now there was a two-step, right? There were people who were protesting the building of an Islamic, essentially a community center, 4 blocks from Ground Zero. There was the virulent, uncut Islamophobia. And then there was the sort of I'm a reasonable, sort of liberal lefty.
You're a podcaster and you are a scholar, and when you talk about Islamophobia in this way, it sounds a lot more reasonable.
And it's the whole. Those people, they're just knee-jerk Islamophobes. But I am the more nuanced take where I'm actually analyzing it and doing logic to show that they are. And
I'm
that's
a scholar, and I have analyzed the text of all of the holy books, and this is the most violent inherently.
And the way that this works is that nuanced lefty take, who's not afraid to actually address this real question. What they do is they allow oxygen and air for the sort of the vanguard, if you will, the full-on, completely unvarnished transphobes in this instance to really get out there. So if you were to track Charlie Kirk in terms of his transphobia from, let's say, a year or two ago to today, you would see he's able to go further and further, where it starts off like trans ideology. It's one thing to be trans, it's another to be pushing on us. And now we are getting to where it is like it's eliminationist. And we're seeing it in the context of the legislation that's being proposed by Republicans in terms of the Don't Say Gay bill. And what happens is as these bigots move on one direction, it gets backfilled by all the reasonable leftists who are just like, well, the real issue is we need to protect the kids and we need to have an honest debate about this. And in fact, it's not an honest
The
debate.
Sam Harrises of transphobia.
Exactly.
And just to give a slight bit of context here, how they start, Charlie is reacting to this trans TikToker, Dylan Mulvaney, who met with Biden at the White House, and a caller or a viewer responds to him by saying, oh, maybe this was an October surprise, that Biden meeting with this trans TikToker is going to almost lose him the midterms. And just a question, did any of us know that Dylan Mulvaney, did any of us know who Dylan Mulvaney was, or him being at the White House?
Because
that's why I'm leaving the left. I heard about this.
This is all a manufactured, like the idea that somehow something's changed with trans ideology. They're taking over. And in fact, you look at every one of the 60 pieces of legislation that reference anything to do with transgenderism or gender affirming care. It is all of it to attack trans people and their parents and their families. Here's Charlie Kirk.
One of our team members said, so this is the Democrats' October surprise.
Hilarious.
The October surprise is having the tranny go to the White House. Be like, wow, I met with the president. Yeah, good luck.
What?
Honestly, all kidding aside, this is a misogynistic parody of what he thinks a woman is. It's insulting to every single woman out there. People say, oh, you're being transphobic. Like, honestly, shut up, okay? You got invited to the White House to go interview the President of the United States? You're being transphobic. No, actually, I just want things to be normal again and not have to live in this non-stop tornado of gender confusion. I'll say it again. It's gender blackface. It's no different. The adult male who identifies as a girl concluded the video by imploring people to get out and vote. That's right. It's all about getting out to vote. You got to wonder kind of what population they think they're really going to get to rise up and vote. They are collapsing with parents. I could just see a 55-year-old carpenter in the battleground state of Georgia. And he opens up his phone and he's trying to figure out who he's going to vote for. And he opens and he sees this trans whatever talking to Biden and says, what the fresh hell is this? If you want to encourage a red wave, do more of this. Right before an election. They hate you so much they don't care.
About winning elections.
And by the way, Mulvaney claims the president has watched series of the Days of Girlhood. And, if you want to go really far, it honestly in some ways could be worse than blackface because the people in blackface never actually claimed they were black people. We always have to be lectured about appropriation of cultures and all that. Why can you appropriate womanhood?
I mean, this is about erasure. This is eliminationist rhetoric. That's what's going on here. And the idea that there is a tornado of this stuff is it's the functional equivalent of like, well, we've got to look into the election being stolen because people are concerned about it. It is simply because they have worked themselves into a frenzy about the existence of trans people.
He even says that trans, referring to Dylan Mulvaney, that trans whatever. Like, he won't even dignify them with a identifier.
And the idea that there are like there's this tornado of gender questioning, to the extent that there is, it really is just because we had, and this is what all the pushback is about, just as a society, we're moving in the direction of no longer ostracizing and basically categorizing trans people as some group that we get a freebie to degrade and shit on and mock. And people forget that, like, you know, I mean, I saw a clip of Jon Stewart from, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. He was commenting on Kucinich calling for a trans a person to be on the Supreme Court. And Jon Stewart didn't sound much different from...
I mean, he just apologized for that.
I understand. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, society has moved rather quickly not to, set up, here's a hotline on how you become trans and, get a free, for every free gender transition you go through, you get, 20% off a pair of jeans or something. No, it was just that at one point society evolves to where, like, you know what? Maybe it's wrong to completely ostracize and make these people pariahs because it is actually like killing kids and killing grown-ups and adults.
Yeah, I mean, and that brings us back to why maybe Biden decided to have said trans TikToker at the White House. It's because the more visible trans people are, the less trans kids are going to say, wow, there's no place for me in society and I might take my own life. But what Charlie Kirk is advocating for is for a return to that kind of environment. Back in the closet. And when I say take their own life, like, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. When you create an environment that is actively hostile and hateful towards a group of people where they see no way out and they can't be themselves, those are the consequences. And those are the consequences that Charlie Kirk wants.
Absolutely.
And nobody who did blackface for fun, which, like, pretty sure some of your friends still do that, Charlie Kirk, I would guess, or at least laugh about it behind the scenes. Maybe he knows Crowder. But, like, they never were, when people said that blackface was no longer socially acceptable, no one was falling into a depression or taking their own life because they couldn't participate in a racist activity anymore. It's just so silly. And I love also, he's femininity defender Charlie Kirk. He's very interested in defining certain gender roles because misogynists, transphobes, homophobes, racists like these people, they feel threatened, like Charlie Kirk, they feel threatened when those boundaries are not so defined because his grasp on his own masculinity and identity is so tenuous and paper thin that unless society is structured in the way that it exactly was when he was a kid, he doesn't understand how he can, like, have a place in this world. And that's what these conservatives are. They're scared little bitches that can't evolve with the rest of society. That's what Charlie Kirk is.
I mean, he's really talking about not when he was a kid, but when his audience was a kid. And that's what's going on. I mean, he is trying again to become Rush Limbaugh one donut at a time. Calling from a 703 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 703. 703. 703. And
Bye-bye.
Bye. Sorry about that. You are gone. I mean, I guess I'm not really that sorry about that. I almost just picked up 703 again. Calling from a 412 area code. 412. 412. Who's this?
How are you doing? You hear me?
Barely.
Hey, how are you doing today?
What?
Let me take off the Bluetooth. Okay.
Yeah. No Bluetooth. Never come on the show with
Hear me
Bluetooth.
now, Sam?
Yeah, a little bit. Who is this? Where are you calling from?
I'm a Pennsylvania voter.
Okay. Pennsylvania voter, assuming you're coming from.
I'm excited to
calling
vote
from
for
Pennsylvania.
John Fetterman and Shapiro come November 8th.
Yeah.
Yesterday's debate solidifies that Dr. Oz is a crook, and he's a shill, and he's a puppet of the MAGA Republicans.
Now, let me ask you this. Did you go into the debate like undecided?
Nope. I am a firm supporter of John Fetterman.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't think that any firm supporters would change their mind, because the reason why you're voting for John Fetterman is not because he's not polished as Dr. Oz, and not because you're worried about, aphasia. It's because of the policies. So that's not terribly surprising to me. What are people around you saying?
Well, I grew up in Pittsburgh. I actually lived right across the river from Braddock, where Fetterman was mayor. So there it was, of course, a lot more Democrats.
Yeah.
I moved out to the country a couple years ago. It's actually like a mega country, you know what I mean? A lot of conservatives out here.
Yeah.
But nobody's really talking about the primaries. I don't see any yard signs for Dr. Oz or Mastriano. There's very little noise in the air, if you know what I mean.
Well, that could be that could bode well. Appreciate the phone call.
All right, I appreciate it. So have a good day.
Thanks. You too. I mean, who knows? Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. Hi, Emma. How are you?
Mindy!
Hi, Mindy.
Hi, how are you? How are you? Oh, I had a grandson. I'm a bubby now. I need a chauffeur. I know.
Congrats.
Thank you. Name Ari.
Oh, that's a great name.
Okay.
Thank
So the reason why I'm calling is about Fetterman in my area.
Okay. Do tell.
I wanted to give a report. There are very little yard signs anywhere in my area. There's a few Shapiro, a lot. Well, actually, there's like a moderate amount of Shapiro, and there's very few Fetterman. There's like very few Oz. Very few signs around here. They're on like the main streets, like the main country roads where I live.
Okay.
But they're all in a row. There's like Fetterman, Oz, like there's just all of them. But there are more Shapiro. But I'm talking to people about it. Like my dog groomer was here this morning. I was talking to my dog groomer, who's like a gun carrying, like moron. Well, she's not a moron. She's a nice girl, but she's,
Right.
she's like kind of like she doesn't really watch politics, but it's like she.
Let's hope she doesn't listen to the show either, or your dog.
No, she doesn't listen to the show.
Your dog's grooming next time might not be so.
No, she's great. But she doesn't. She does spout Fox talking points, like once in a while. So she said to me today she's definitely not voting for Mastriani. I think that even the people that are the Republicans here are scared shitless of him. No, like he's not going to win. There's like no way he's going to win. I
From your mouth to God's ears.
Now, I would be very surprised. I mean, anybody you talk to really has a stance on Mastriani. As far as Fetterman's concerned, I don't know. I kind of think last night softened him a little bit. He was scary looking, and people thought he was like goonish, like kind of lurchous looking. And then when he was like trying to find the words yesterday, I mean, it was very painful to watch. But a lot of people that I know that I've been talking to today, like, thought it was horrible. They're saying things to me like, just because you had a stroke doesn't mean your mind's not sharp. Like, like they're like, his mind's still sharp. Like people, I think he was relatable yesterday. I don't know. I could be wrong. but I think that he was relatable yesterday, and it softened him to the point where everybody knows somebody that has a stroke when you're my age. So everybody knows that somebody, is impaired in their walking or impaired in their speech, but their mind's good. So I don't know what's going to happen. But Dr. Oz, my husband's like not nearly as political as me, and he watched the debate with me last night, and he leans like he's not a moderate, but he's not crazy like a liberal like me. And he was like watching it last night, and he just couldn't get out of his mind what kind of, MF Oz was. Like, he was just so disgusting. Like, he just didn't want to look at him for 5 minutes, let alone 4 years. I mean, not that he would vote for him, but he was so offensive when he said that line about the women in the abortion with the going with the it's between the doctor, the patient, and the legislative guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, he just like freaked out. I mean, like people are just freaking out. Even my when I told my dog groomer today what he said, she's like, I can't. She told me she couldn't stand him either. Nobody likes him, so I don't know how it's going to play out. I know he was up really high, like 2 months ago. It's really unfortunate that he had the stroke. I still feel that he's going to pull it out. I personally feel he's going to pull it out because I think people are going to vote down.
Mindy, are you out there getting people to vote?
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I'm talking to people. They asked me to poll. They asked me to be a poll worker. They've reached out to me, and I've reached out to them. But I have a really big mouth. I don't want to get killed. I mean, I'm not a good person to have as a poll worker.
I mean, you know what? There's a lot of people who are afraid of becoming poll workers, in particularly in states like yours and Arizona and Georgia, and there's been reports
Nevada,
that people are leaving. Well, Mindy, I appreciate this perspective. If you have more info, call us back.
Yeah, I'll let you know. I do have a Fetterman loan sign in my neighborhood because my next door neighbor has a Let's Go Brandon sign facing my house. So I have a Fetterman sign kind of facing his house, and that's really as aggressive as we've gotten around here. But I'll let you know. I'll keep my ear at Wawa.
Sign report.
You know what's going on.
Sign report with Mindy.
Yes.
We got to get you a
will
dark
definitely
Brandon sign.
He's a Jewish guy, too. I don't know what he thinks that he should be a Republican for, but whatever.
All right.
But that's it. I'm a bubby now, so I have to be really in control. I mean, like, I just have to do the bubby thing.
All right, Grandma. Thanks for
But
calling.
I'll keep you posted.
All right, bye-bye.
I was wondering who she met, who was Jewish. Her neighbor.
Her neighbor.
Okay.
Get the sense Mindy's too.
No, I mean,
She's a booby.
got the sense.
All right, one more phone call, okay? Final phone call of the day. Calling from a 267 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, Sam.
Yes.
I will cut right to the chase. I am calling to debate you, Sam, on the tenets of libertarianism.
You just dug a dagger into the hearts of everyone in this office. Everybody was like right on the edge, just going like, please God, no, please God, no. Are you serious? Or are you joking?
Sam, is that fear in your voice I hear?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Let me cut right to the chase, Sam.
Yeah?
You have debated many a fool on your program who fancy themselves libertarian.
Right?
But it is only I who is the true libertarian.
Right, of course.
You want to ask my name and where I'm calling from?
No, just get to your actual comment. I know you're joking, but you did scare the hell out of everybody.
I mean, I was like, man, I was planning on going to the gym after
We're here
this.
till 3:15.
There's no chance.
You've done this before, haven't you, caller?
I have not. This is my first time calling in. Forgive my energy. I'm traveling on horseback, spreading the good word of the non-aggression principle.
Have you also been handing out?
It's not Greg, is it?
No, you're handing out pamphlets.
It sounds like Greg. Greg, is this Greg?
This is not Greg, Sam. This is not Greg.
Okay, all right. Well, it's
You know who Greg is, though?
Do you know who Greg is?
I do not know Greg. I have not met Greg on my travels.
This is really suspicious.
Yeah,
All right,
it's
so what's your
borderline
comment?
Greg.
Let's be quick.
Well, Sam, you've debated many
You said this already.
dim-witted, Dorito-breathed virgins on your show about the tenets of libertarianism, and you've never once spoken to a true libertarian. And here I am. Here is your chance, Sam, to debate me.
Okay, so what do you want to debate about?
What do you want? You got to say something.
Are we talking about age of consent?
Let's start there.
All right, we got to go.
This is your show, Sam. You tell me what you want to debate about. I think you'll find we agree on many things.
Oh my God! All right. You gotta cut to the quick.
You sound like an evil ringmaster.
Are you seriously?
Yeah, you can't wait for us to return serve, Carl. You gotta go.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry. I love your show.
This I wish. Well, I mean, obviously it was on camera, but like the fear, the absolute like stomach knotted fear that Emma had was so palpable. Like it was literally like just all of a sudden like if someone just like opened up a massive like blower of gas into the office.
It's like Inception when the world starts folding in on itself.
Yes. Or just like a zoom in of a bead of sweat just like falling down my face.
I remember a month or two ago we had a call from like a libertarian YouTuber and said, was like, "Are you serious?" He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm an ANCAP." And it was like 2:45. We're like, "No, please call tomorrow.
I mean,
please just call it like 1 p.m.
Yes, just right. But the problem is that we don't know like who is who when we're picking up calls. So it just
you never know. But there is the percentage of libertarians who get picked up at like at 2:29.
I wish we had some data on that.
I know. Someone needs to run the numbers.
All right. A couple IMs, we'll get out of here. Jack, okay. Yes. Hoffman. Does the Majority Report crew have any suggestions or places I get resources from how a man from red rural Michigan can try to make more people go out and vote for liberal positions? There are 3 great proposals and some okay Democrats on the ballot. Go out and talk to your neighbors. Brooklyn Sue. What should consumers do regarding Amy's other than not buy the products? I would go to the website and see if there's anything out there. Maybe one of the things to do is to talk to the supermarkets where they're being carried. And I suspect that if 5 people go to the manager of the supermarket a week complaining about a product, that is 5 times, well, 5 times 0 is still 0, but it is a significantly more than they hear about anything in that regard. And what you really want is the supermarket manager to say to the salesperson, "Hey, we got some problem brewing." Like that's what I think.
Yeah, we need the space for something else.
Well, it's more like just the feedback that they're like it's starting to permeate like the consciousness of their consumers. I mean, and somebody had I lost the IM saying that I understand it wasn't a contentious interview, but like, is there really is the left really engaging in consumer activism to support? Is that effective? I don't know if it's effective, but this is not. Let's be clear. We've already talked to the union people who are organizing them, which is obviously like the primary source of influence. But there is no doubt that reputational harm impacts the decision making in terms of whether a management is going to negotiate with their workers better. We saw it in the context of the St. Vincent's nurses. I mean, I've seen it like directly in the context of the Rockettes, in New York 15 years ago. I mean, that definitely has an impact. Pinko Bastard. I think Christian Smalls will be a contender versus Snowden for the most progressive influencing figure of the first half of this century. Maybe. We'll see. I mean, I don't think we're there yet, but we'll see. Tim from Minneapolis. Got a cool story about a local Minnesota program of publicly owned housing addressing homelessness. Let's try and track that down. 952 area code if you want to. This program is very relevant to this IMer. We will. Let's try it on Friday maybe. Sam Cedar's right. Bicep. Hey crew, happy Humpington's Day from a longtime listener, new member. Well, thank you.
Very nice.
All right, 5 more. Bob. Charlie Kirk giving a new definition to the term white knight. NJ Mailman. The Blake Masters video sounds like a shitty ripoff of Friday Night Lights. Sad eyes, empty pockets will lose.
I was gonna say, like, it sounds like the instrumental music at the end of Walk the Line or something,
Or
or
like from
some
Boyhood or something.
Yeah, right. Something
coming of age movie.
Like country music adjacent.
Slappy Tubbs. Damn, Emma. Best Sam Harris impression I've ever heard on MR. More.
That was, I would say, one of my moments of political awakening was a hatred of Sam Harris, and so that fire still burns very bright to this day.
Fond. Okay. Jeez. Can you please make sure to clip the Amy's interview? I live in Santa Rosa area and I've been a big fan of their food and drive-through restaurant, and I'm appalled by their anti-union stance. I want to share that interview as far and wide as I can. We will, of course, always. I think we always cut all the interviews, right? Don't we? Don't know when it'll go up, but keep your eyes open. Fierce Deity. What is up with this Friday Night Lights ass music? And the final IM of the day. It comes from Isn't Lizen? I can't pronounce it. Isn't Lizen. Growing up, I don't think I was ever in a classroom with less than 30 students. Wow, that's nuts. All right, folks. Bradley, Matt, Emma, good job today. Emma will be here tomorrow. I will see you on Friday. Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive